So here we go with Chapter 10, creating cross sections of the design, which gets us quite a ways into the book at this point, and it follows our learning of corridors, which is dovetailing right nicely into this chapter. As we learned a lot about assemblies and corridors, our assemblies are going to look a lot like our cross sections and cross section views we're about to create. So get your homework ready for Chapter 10 and your submittal here in Moodle in Chapter 10 as usual, and your lab files, your DWGs for AutoCAD are in here along with the complete files as well. They are all in here. There's an XML file, which is an executable or a extensionable markup language. I might have said that wrong. XML is a common file format to bring in data into AutoCAD, and there's a couple of them we're going to bring into our section views with our DWGs. So without further ado, let's go to page 191 and we'll start talking about cross sections. So we have our design process up through corridors and other linear features we've been designing in different ways, and we're going to continue to talk about how to thoroughly vet a design. So one way we could do that is by making what's called a section and putting on a section view the same said section. So it's yet another way to visualize and display our design. It's basically slicing into, and this is very key here on page 191, into the design in a perpendicular direction. We'll see what that means in a minute. So there's a couple ways to do this, and we're first going to learn about the section editor to quickly and dynamically look at cross-section views one after another in more of an analysis and checking to modify your design as you build your corridors and how they cut into the earth around you. But for documentation purposes, we need to create what's called sample lines, which we'll learn about quickly here, and then in turn dictate the sections and section views we make from those sample lines initially that need to be created first to make the section views. And then at the end, we're going to learn a little bit more about how the section views, they're much like profile views, but just in a different perpendicular direction to your alignment and profile. And those section views are the housing that basically contains your sections inside of them, or your sections of your corridor that we just learned how to make. And other sections, it could be your existing ground. And then the annotations, of course, that go with them, like anything. And later in chapter 11, we're going to be learning a little deeper on that, on annotations and messing with the sections in that way, much like we did profile views. So think of them as very much like profile views. So let's get started into the beginning of the chapter, and we're going to learn how to use the section editor first, and that's our dynamic way to quickly go through the 3D train and slices of our model in different intervals. So start by opening section editor for exercise 10.1, the DWG, and I have it here in my AutoCAD 2022, which I'm continuing to use as I have this whole semester. So we have our three viewports going on again, one showing more of our top view with our 2D wireframe, one showing our assemblies, which is helpful to kind of see how these things all interact, and one showing a 3D view of our train models and our corridors and various other things. So we're going to be doing a lot of work in the left viewport, and let's start there. So to trigger this section editor, it wants us to pick the corridor, which is the pink item. We're going to pick the corridor, and like many things, when we pick it, I have quite a few files open, so my CAD appears to be going a little slow here, but bear with me. I have all my contextual ribbon items for a corridor. This is my corridor for Jordan Court. We learned already a few things, how to edit targets, regions, make surfaces. All those same things are in corridor properties. But now we're going to go to what's called section editor. And I'm going to pick that. And it converts this view to my section views in a live mode. So before we go there, we're just going to talk a little bit about section views. So this is at a certain station. You can see which station it is right here at 000. Actually, the book wants us to do this view. That's actually probably a good idea. Let me close this quick. Close the section editor. Let's keep this view as it is. And let me click into this viewport. And well, first of all, let's click the corridor. Now let's click in this viewport, and whichever viewport we're in is which view becomes the live section editor. So have the viewport that you want it to be in picked. Now let's try it one more time, just showing you how to bounce between views. And when you're done looking at this in this view, you hit close like I did just a little bit ago. So the goal was to look at this section view while I zoom into here at 0 plus 0. So this is the sample line, or the CSV station slider actually. So if I move this, it moves my view with it. So this is a live bar here. The station slider moves exactly to this station, and that's exactly the station I see here. It is on station or close to 75, which is 75 feet. We can also move it around this way, clicking on different stations. It moves. See, we have our corresponding section. This is almost like a sample line in a way, which we'll learn about in a little bit. And here's the section of the road that we have cut into the earth. So we have our curb, we have our daylight here going to the earth. We have our drive lane, our 2%. This is a live view. So when you change your design, it updates in real time. Our other lane and curb and everything else. So offset is offset to the right, which is this side, or the left, which is this side. This is the center. A lot of sections are symmetrical, but not always. This one, you can see on the left, it is wider because we have a little bit of a lane over here, bulbing out a little farther to the left side. So remember, as you go up and down in alignment, this is the left side, this is the right side, because we're traveling this way along it upstream, or going upstream. Excuse me, downstream, because the numbers are going up. So yeah, basically, exercise 10.1 is a lot of exploration. So here we can go to the next region. We can go to the last station. We can go to one station at a time through this. These go to intervals of 25, or some of these odd stations along the alignment go to, in this case, a PC, the point of curvature, with the section editor. Zoom out here a little bit so we can see this. This moves as you move the viewport around. It refreshes and updates. This isn't necessarily a view, these section editors, for printing and documenting. It's more of a live viewer to check your design in a perpendicular cut. So think of a section view. In this case, this slices into the earth straight down in the elevation and the Z dimension. So this is like a slice of that part of the corridor and earth and design you have. So that's essentially what a section is. It's always perpendicular in general. It doesn't have to be, but in general, think of it as almost always perpendicular to my alignment here, which in this case is Jordan Court. Okay. Now by step 4, it wants us to go to a really exact station. Let me go make sure my contextual ribbon's open there, and I will go to station 1 plus 75 here. And it says, hey, take a look at the ditches here. We have some ditches that are formed by the assemblies we had made in chapter 9. And as you look at a section, so we're looking at it in plan view here, we're looking at it in this section editor here. Notice we have certain ditches. Offsets are always particular to sections because you're getting an instantaneous slice only along this plane, and you could think of it as kind of a YZ dimension or XY dimension, or excuse me, there's always a Z dimension in it, which, like profile views, is in this direction in the Y. And then the X is the offset. So this is the offset, the amount to the right or left of the middle of the section. So the middle of it would be about this point here, this slider, this grip, which is right on the alignment. So that corresponds to this spot here, which is also this spot here. And this side here is the left side, which is also this side. It looks a little weird. This seems like it's on the right in this viewport, but it's really on the left because remember we're going this way. It's all relative to the direction the alignment's going. This is our large lane here, which is here. So a little bit takes a minute to visualize this, but you can see your road in two different dimensions, so to speak. Let me go to a real world example of a job I did in the past. And I'll show a couple different versions of section views. So one example here I'm going to give, these are more beautified, prettied ones that were drafted to scale in model space. I might have annotated them in paper space here. You could do either, depending on your expertise of annotating in both areas in AutoCAD, which isn't a huge part of this class, but it's a very big part of drafting. This is a section view of a common part of a road here through this Mary Avenue I designed at different stations. It has very specific details of, let's see if I can zoom in here a little bit, of the top asphalt, the base course, the sub base with different hatchings to depict different materials. Hatching for landscaping and the curbing of a certain width and height. The sidewalk, the boulevard sidewalk next to the landscaping, and then it shows a quick area of topsoil disturbed next to the sidewalk with a certain shoulder next to it. So this is a cross section, a slice into the road at a very specific area of this design in Missoula, Montana. These are more artistic in a way, but they're very representative of a more detailed section detail. These aren't section views, they're more for a common section, as we call it in the industry, that this area of the road would look like this. They're to much more detail with annotations on them. And if we go to the end of this job, so this, if we go back into here, so let's think of this one area of the road. We have Mary Avenue here. Here's a station, 4 plus 0, 0, 5 plus 0, 0, 500. We're going up in the station to this roundabout that was designed. So these section views cut in this direction that my cursor's going, in these perpendicular directions along this alignment. The alignment goes this way, down, 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 and this is just Mary Avenue. Here's our profile view that corresponds with our alignment up here in plan view. Very typical plan profile view as it goes upstream or goes upwards. So now let's move to our section views that go side by side, not on the same sheet, but they go exact with this plan profile view. Let's go to the ones at 400 and 500 perhaps. Typically in our plan sets, not always, they are at the end of the plan set for the city, something they want. Those same section views would be right around here in the 400s. So that same plan profile view I was looking at in the top-down view and also in the Z dimension view in the profile view. This is the slice into the road near where I was just at on the last sheet. So here is the section view. Oop, I keep moving around the wrong direction there. Near where I was, we were doing these at a pretty far spread, or 50-foot intervals at max between our section views, but you can see they're hovered around 0, and they go to the right and to the left. We'll learn more about this in chapter 11, but here's a slice into my corridor, is for sure what this is, and it catches back to my existing earth, which is this dashed line. So I have a couple different sections overlaid onto this section view at these exact stations. So this is a perpendicular slice into the earth at that exact spot in the road, which I'll go back to the sheet where station 450 and 500 were in a second. These are in the Z dimension or the elevation dimension and along perpendicular to the alignment in this offset direction, okay? So here I am back on sheet number 10, back in the plan, the top, in the profile view, the elevation view of that same general area we were looking at just a second ago with the section views. We were kind of looking in this general region, about 4 plus 0, 0 to about 600 or so is what we were looking at. So there were a slice here, there's a slice here at 500, There's a slice at 550 here through the road, and there's a slice at 600 going into this roundabout. So those views were depicting in the perpendicular slicing to this alignment here. So there's a real world road plan of a city road. And we'll continue on page 193, and we're going to go into the ribbon now, or excuse me, the profile view. We'll zoom out on this view and look at the profile view of Jordan Court. I'm once again going to change this style a little bit so we can see it better. There we go. I just fast forward a little bit so we can get past that. So going back to my section editor, this goes back and forth one at a time. As you can see I'm doing here. You can see it moving along my profile view to the left, which is pretty cool. As I go through this, it corresponds to a line here, see? That's helpful to see where you're at on the vertical profile. So that's helpful that the views interact with each other, the section view editor and the profile view, in a live type of mode. And now it wants us to go into the parameter editing mode. So let me go back to station 1+75 where the ditches were most prominent for that example in part 4. I'll go to, we're looking at it here in the section editor. We're also seeing where it slices into our profile. The vertical, I'll go to parameter editor. We'll open this up, expand it. And we're looking at the corridor, the exact corridor parameters in this exact station 1+75 with all the assembly here, which is subdivision road, and all the sub-assemblies within it and all their variables. So it wants us to scroll down to the exact spot left daylight and change the value for back slope width and foreslope width to 0. So let's turn some of these down. These daylight subassemblies get really complex, some of them. So we're at the left daylight, and now we're going to go to back slope width. And we're going to change the value. If you double click in these 1, 2 times, you can change these. Call that one 0. And you can see my section edit. I'm looking at my section view right there. It changed. And we're going to go to this foreslope width. And it shows, once I change that one to 0, should have a change there as well, see? And it'll show, if I kind of click around, I have a override. It says true there because I edited something. So it's just showing you how to edit looking at this view. I'm going to close out my corridor parameters, and I'm going to close my section view at my section editor. So just change some things. Let's hit close. One thing I forgot to mention, I just backpedaled a little bit. If you wanted to on previously station 1+75, you can also do for the right side daylight as well. And go 0 and 0 on that. It's just showing you more spots you can make edits. That's all. It wants us to go zoom into where the ditch is at 175. You notice what we edited, we told the ditch to go away. Essentially we shrunk it down here, and you can see what we did in plan view here. It's essentially nearly gone. It's just cutting into the earth a little bit more sharply. That's where we made our edits. So let's go back into our corridor. Let me pick one of the blue lines of the corridor this time to get up the contextual ribbon. And this time, let's pick the upper right viewport before we pick section editor here. to turn that on. And give it a second. I'm a little slow here. Let's go to 1 plus 75 again. You can go one at a time, or you could pull this down and select it this way. And we're back at the station and also the section editor live view. Let's go back on the ribbon and click parameter editor again and get our dialog box for deep into this subassembly here, which is in the section. In this case, we have this open. It might be hogging a lot of real estate in your screen, but I'm going to try a new command here. I'm going to apply a change to a specified station range over my alignment to a specified list of stations. Hit that. And my dialog box comes up in my apply to a station range dialog box, basically. And let's click the button next to start station right here, which allows us to click an exact station on the drawing. We could type it in manually as well. And I got to go pick in my left viewport just to the northwest of the ditches. Let's see if I can get this to work right. Almost got this a little bit big in my way here. Let me pick just to the northwest, which is generally, this is the southwest. Let's just pick over here, more for instructional purposes. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's just getting the station somewhere over here. Let's just say it's outside of where we've made that edit in that V area. And it's repeating the process for the end station. We'll say, where do we want to end this change? Go back into here and somewhere to the southwest. So somewhere over here, relatively close to 200, station 2 plus 00. And we're going to hit OK. It made some changes. It edited the stations a little bit, or the slice section. We have to go into rebuild our corridor here. And there it cut it out. So we basically told that area to apply that same change I made at that one station, which is this. The width got to 0 to a range, which I picked from about 1 plus 50 to about 200. So I surgically made it narrow that ditch down like I did in my previous operation to a range of stations, which was this back slope width and forward slope width. Pretty deep edits. We'll close the parameter editor for now, and you can see the edits I made mostly in plan view very well here. So I had to go to court one more time again, Jordan Court, and say rebuild to kick it in the butt and tell it to manually do that. Madison Lane needs to be rebuilt too. You can tell by seeing this warning dialog symbol. But that was the final thing I did. You can leave it on automatic so it happens, but when you open this file, that will not be checked on. This will not be checked on, so you had to do this manually by right-clicking Jordan Court corridor, which is in your prospector in your tool space. This is where the corridors reside. So that's the end of the first part, and it dovetails a little bit as we looked at this subassembly. We looked at the parameter editor, and this should go back to chapter 9. You see these assemblies with subassemblies here, right lane being the subassembly of the subdivision road, and there's all kinds of little points basically inside of these subassemblies too, with all these values, not all points but variables you can change. So this is kind of familiar with what we just learned about corridors and assemblies and subassemblies. They're all populated in here to edit in our section parameter editor. So that's a little bit harken back to chapter 9. And it's a good point as you look at these. If I go back here, it gets pretty critical to have these things named that make sense. Like if you had something that didn't say right here in the subassembly definition, this can get really confusing. So naming conventions of assemblies can get really critical, especially the more complex they get. I can't emphasize that enough for how, if a drawing gets busy or more complex. Well, let's go into page 195 now. We're going to create some sample lines. So sample lines go along with the alignment. They serve and they go make a cut along our alignment, basically, for the cross section. We need the sample lines to make the cross sections. So when they're created, they're associated with an alignment. They have to be. Multiple sample lines are usually created quickly all at once. So sample lines can be placed into what's called a sample line group right here. And that group forms what we call sections and section views later on. This is the first step in that process. So we're going to select the parent alignment first. As we do that, there's many different tools to do so. One, you can do one station at a time, or you can do a range of stations, which is my personal favorite, to do many. You can do them from exact corridor station. This method basically creates a sample line wherever there's an assembly insertion on the corridor. So you might have hundreds of cuts of your assemblies. Depends how many times your assembly is sampled in your corridor. That's a lot. It could be a lot. You can also pick manual points. This is ideal very much so for irregular shaped objects that might have multiple vertices in an odd spot that aren't necessarily maybe perpendicular. And you can also select polylines. So it's very similar to the pick points on screen. You can pick existing polylines that are in odd spots or wherever you might want to throw a sample line to make a section view. So there's a lot of little custom ways. Range of stations and at stations and corridor stations, the 3 station options, are more automated ways, with range of stations probably being the quickest. Pick points and select existing polylines are more very manual ways to make them in an exact spot off the bat. So let's go to 197 and create our first sample lines. And that's going to be in our second file, creating sample lines. Open that up. So in this case, we're just going to start in the Home tab of the ribbon. I got added in there. Go to the Home tab. And like I've said before, we have all of our palettes for Civil 3D and various related Civil 3D things here. We have our Create Ground Data, Civil 3D options, and our Create Design is where we've been in a lot lately. And also our views. This is our 3D, Civil 3D home base here for a lot of creation of Civil 3D objects next to our most common AutoCAD commands over here. Draw, modify, layers, and copy paste. So we're going to go to sample lines, which is just right here. Click it. And now we need to pick an alignment, which is prompted in our ribbon. Go back here. Oops. And if I have a lot of alignments, I just like to hit enter to select from a list, or I can pick it graphically like this. Now my create sample line group comes up, my dialog box. So for the name, I'm just going to say design for now. For the style, how it's going to look, these sample lines, I'm going to verify that road sample line is selected, which it is. And under select data sources to sample, we're going to check what we got going on down here. Well, first let's check the label style. And this is the style of labels that will be on there. And we're going to make sure section name is selected, which it already is by default through our Civil 3D settings, which is nice in this drawing. Now take a look at the picture on the bottom of page 197. And we want our options to verify or to match essentially what we have in that picture. So what that means is we're just going to have Jordan Court basic style on, and that is the only one right now. We don't want all these other corridors from other roads coming in there. We're just going to do this one for now, and then we're going to hit OK. Now let's hold tight. We can make one at a time. This slider will come on, this red slider, but let's not click in there anywhere yet. Let's pull this sample line tools down like so. And we're going to expand this button over here. And we're going to go into, I was in one area. This is more settings and default settings. Click the bar here. This is more the area you want for all of our different ways to, these are the manual ways, like we were saying, these are the range of stations, one station at a time. I want to do from corridor stations. Okay. And then in the create sample lines from corridor stations, it's okay, we'll accept the defaults to create the sample lines on Jordan Court. We'll just accept everything that comes in here, 50-foot width on both sides. We'll hit OK. Give it a second. They need a little bit of time to populate. And I'm going to hit escape to escape that create sample lines command. And they all, boom, get created at every single time there's a slice of a assembly across the alignment. So, for example, if I deleted this one, this sample line, just so you can see this better, every time there's a slice of the assembly, you can tell by the blue from the corridor. This is part of the corridor. If I click it, we got a corridor. I'm going to hit escape to not have it clicked. I'll zoom out. So it basically created a slice or a sample line at every one of those assembly instances, okay? So quite a few. You can delete them, whittle them out right now if you wanted to. For example, there's certain grips. You can make the swath where it cuts wider. Either side, you can use this grip to bend it so it's not perpendicular to the alignment anymore. You can use this grip here to slide it along the stationing of the alignment. Okay. You can also just have it out, have one clicked, and you can delete one at a time individually. So that is basically a quick intro to sample lines. We'll move on to creating section views onto page 198 now. So section views, creating section views is going to be the meat and potatoes of this chapter. I'm going to go into my third drawing, creating single section views. We'll learn how to do one at a time, learn to walk before we can run. So I'm going to go into the left viewport and zoom into the sample line labeled 13 plus 25. So we've already made a pile of these from make from corridor. Let me hit regenerate, command regenerate. You can see I'm trying to do it there, regen all, just to kick my model, my DWG in the butt to re-annotate things to a better size. That's something you got to do in Civil 3D a lot. So we're at 13 plus 25, okay? And let's click that sample line, like so. And then let's go with the contextual ribbon of what sample lines. So we picked our object or noun. Now our verbs come up here on the top on our contextual ribbon for sample lines, right? Let's go that way. Let's go the route that the book's suggesting on that. And in this case, we're going to click Create Section View. So there's a couple options you can pull down here, make multiple or one. We're going to make one to start. We're going to learn to walk before we can run. Click that. Give it a second. This is our Create Section View general dialog box. Let's make sure our alignment Jordan Court selected. Let's make sure our sample line group, which we only have one, but you might have multiple depending on how many roads you have, right? Let's make sure that sample line is still selected, which it should be. Good. The section view style, we want it to be designed as it is. This is how the section view is going to look. That's the style. Let's go to next to advance the create section view and to the offset range. And we're going to say that's okay. This is stuff where you can customize how far it goes to the left and right, the offsets, but we're not going to do that today. Hit next, the elevation range, same thing. In the Z dimension, or in this case it looks like the Y axis, but it's really cutting into the Z. Let's say you can go to exact amounts, but we're going to say automatic. Hit next. We're advancing to the section display options now. Okay, this is where it gets a little more crazy on what's going to be displayed on our single section view. We'll verify the style selected is Jordan Court, or style selected for Jordan Court. Next to it is design, which is here. Yes, it is. The code set style. This is how the section that we're slicing into is going to look. That is good. Hit OK. And we're going to say, lastly, create section view. Let me move out a little bit. So the corridor code set styles, that is one, basically how the section slice is going to look, and we'll talk about that in a second. Let me just go somewhere off on the screen. Doesn't matter where. Send to identify section view origin. Let's just pick somewhere here above the profile view. Create it. So it corresponds between this sample line, corresponds with this section view. So this is an exact slice of where this sample line is at 13 plus 25. Okay, so this is that exact station, 13 plus 25. Now here is the section. I only grab one sample thing from that section, and it is a corridor section. Right here I selected it. So here's my section, but to see the section we need it to place or to be shown on a section view. So if I select this grid, that is the section view, which has its own properties and styles and annotations and label options. We'll learn about more later. Same with this section. It has its own annotation styles, labels, and styles to make its appearance. This one just happens to have its own style called design, which inside of it you have other options available. So that is the end of section 10.3 to get you introduced to making your first section view. Let's go to section 10.4 to create multiple section views. So I'm in that drawing creating multiple section views now, and I'm in the left viewport, which is my top view again. And similar to 10.3, let's start in the left viewport, and we're gonna have an option to create multiple section views this time. So let's go to the home tab here and say section views, create multiple views. Okay, and this launches our create multiple section views dialog box. We're going to check some of these items. We'll change the sample line group to section sheets. We'll still have Jordan alignment as the alignment we'll use. And then we're going to click the ellipsis next to the path that says select layout as sheet, but that will be in the next view. Let me make sure my other options are good. Road section is good. Let's hit next for now. Now we're going to make sure that production, the placement of the section views is selected, and then we're going to hit the ellipsis to go to the ... Which template, DWT out there, do we want to use for a cross section sheet? Well, we got to go one step deeper into this ellipse. So this is probably the trickiest part of this chapter. Do this ellipsis. Now go wherever you saved all your downloads for this chapter from Moodle. It's going to take me just a second. I'll navigate there with a pause. So I'm in my lab, chapter 10 lab files. There should only be one DWT. So I'm going to go to my for video area. Actually, they're not in there, but you should just have this only DWT in the drawings you downloaded, the sections. It's different than the DWGs. This is a template file, which is a DWT. We'll hit open. That is my file now. And I'm going to select, so it has the ArcD options. I'm going to select ArcD section 20 scale. Right there, make sure that's selected, and we hit OK. Now there shouldn't be many more changes further. I'm going to hit next now, and we'll just accept automatic offsets, automatic elevations, and this should be good. If it's not perfect, we're going through the general motions and we're getting through most of the steps. We just found a custom template basically to dictate how my section views are going to be placed in this final form here. That's the main goal of this. Next, create section views. Let's go to a place where we think many of them can be sat without overlapping anything. Let's go way up here above my profile view and let's click left data click. Give it a second, they're going to create. There are my section views. I created multiple along a section or along my alignment with a certain look, and they go uphill starting, it's kind of weird in this way they go. In this case they go from left to right, but they start from bottom and they go to top, up station. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 as they go up. You got to start back down here. And then this way. So a little weird there. They're all cut into the road. I made multiple section views along my Jordan Court alignment, and they're just the corridor section basically. No existing earth in this case. So let's end by sampling more sources at the end of this chapter at 10.5. Go into your last file, sampling more sources. So one of the last main things with section views is we can add more data to them in the swath that we have, the sections we have, and we're going to do that, basically exactly that. So in one of the section views, basically just pick one here in the upper right viewport. So it doesn't really matter, you can go in the left or the upper right, but let's just go in the upper right where they're kind of pinned on. And let's just pick, you can pick about any one. Let me pick this section view. Make sure you pick the view. So it's picked on the section view. You get your contextual ribbon for this individual section view on Jordan Court 6+00. Now I'm going to go to this icon here to sample more sources on the ribbon. Okay. And under sampled sources, expand this a little bit, is what is sampled. This is what's already on that section view. So if I move this a little bit, that is what's on it right there. You can see it. If I can kind of see it once, that is this Jordan Court road section that's dynamic, which is usually what we want. And over here we have other available sources we can add to it. So under sampled sources, under available sources, let's go to EG, which is my existing ground. Let's click it and let's add it. That's what we want. We want to verify its new style, how it's going to look, its appearance, its existing ground. That's what we want. We don't want it to be road sections because it'll look exactly like a road section or a, this is essentially the two styles we want. We want them to look different, and we'll see what that means in a second. So verify that that's all good on step 5 and hit OK. Give it a second to think. And now it added essentially a red dash of that section to all the views, which is pretty cool. I'm going to hit regenerate all again. So I basically have a bunch of labels added, which isn't the end of the world. Let me just click the ones on 600 as a group and delete them, just so you can see this better. I basically sampled my existing ground onto every view. And I added labels. I probably could have turned those off, but I basically sampled that view and added a swath of the existing ground, which is great. So I unselected the section view. Let's reselect it again. And let me go to view group properties on the ribbon now. So I selected my section view. I have section view properties contextually. I selected my object. Now I get my verbs again. And let's go to view group properties. So this affects how the whole group view is laid out, the properties of the entire section, multiple section views. A little bit of a mouthful there. And let's go to the sections tab, which is these two sections we have sampled on all of them. We have the EG, the red dashed. We have the Jordan Court, the little blue kind of unhatched proposed road. Now, let's make some further edit. So we had all the labels on. I took them off on one so you could see what we just sampled, the red dashed. But we want to go to change the labels. And let's go to the EG. And let's change the label set to no labels. Hit OK. And let me take a look at this. Let's hit apply. So apply takes the changes without closing the dialog box, and it looks like it took the correct changes. And they all left, which is great. So let's hit OK. The labels are gone now. If I zoom out, it took the labels off of all of them. So I affected the entire group view, the entire group's section view group properties of how they're viewed on all of them by taking the labeling off in one swoop. Okay, so we're just kind of looking at each section views. It's saying start the first one. And I was saying, as we know from what I previously said, they go from left to right in this case, and they start from bottom and they go up to top, which is kind of weird. That's a little backwards. We're used to reading a lot of things from top down. So those things can be edited, but that's typically a default way that they're shown. You can do them from top to bottom too. So we're going to insert something now in XML. Let's go to the Insert tab on the ribbon, and we're going to go to Insert here. And let's go to Insert Land XML, which is a generic type file with some data. I'm going to quickly go to where my documents are for my class. I'll pause for a second to do that. And I want to pick preliminary waterline. In this case, let's hit open. And we're just going to click OK to dismiss the import land XML dialog box. So we have this new design, waterline design we just imported into our drawing essentially. We'll hit OK. Now it's thinking, it's loading into our drawing. Let's give it a second. Let's go to one of the section views. Just pick one. And let's just click any one of them. So remember to click the view, not the section, the view itself, the grid, okay? And let me go back up to the ribbon and say sample more sources again. So we're going to sample something that we just brought in, that land XML. Click that. Now, if I open here, we brought that in. We brought in a pipe network essentially from another drawing that we have in here now. Now we're going to click Add. So we added a new source of data, and let's just hit OK. Give it a second. So it's thinking for a minute. It's bringing in a Civil 3D pipe network basically, and we're sampling that pipe network onto our section views. It might take a little while, so bear with it for a second. Right, it just got done thinking, but it's still loading. Once your spinning wheel stops, hit escape, and let's zoom out a little bit and take a look at some of these. So you can see in a lot of them you have a pipe down here now that is cut in the perpendicular direction, so that pipe running parallel to the road is now been sampled on top of all of our section views. Just a little water pipe. It's now added in the exact location and the elevation and the offset to each section as additional data. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to import another XML file basically. So we're on step 15. Let's go back to Insert Land XML. I accidentally got the wrong ribbon, so if that happens to you, click this button a few times. Accidentally double clicked and made the ribbon buttons go small. This is how you undo that. One too many. One more time, and again. Give it a second. Okay, Insert Land XML. This time let's bring in the subsurface rock, hit open. Let's hit OK to go through the import land XML. We're bringing in a subsurface basically. So we brought in a subsurface of rock, bedrock basically. And let's click another section view again. Go to my upper right viewport. click one section view, click my noun, give it a second, click my noun, get my verbs. I'm going to sample more sources again. That XML of the subsurface I just brought in. I have it here now. Let's add it to my sample line group in my section views. Let's take a look what type it is. Let's set its style. In this case, hit cancel. Let's set its style to rock here. Hit OK. Let's hit OK. Give it a second. It's going to add that to all my views now. It's going to add a bunch of labels. We're going to clear those labels out at the end to end the chapter. So we got a pile of labels that we don't want. And we got this little subsurface rock surface basically going on. So it's still adding. Give it a minute. Once it's done thinking, leave the section view selected, the one we already had. Okay, and we'll go to View Group Properties. You can reselect it and get your same ribbon if you hadn't already. And let's go to rock here. And let's turn to no labels. Hit apply. You can see them disappear. Hit OK to leave that dialog box. And those are all gone now. So now we're in a real life situation. We have a water line and sampled into all of our road section views. We have existing ground in the red dashed, and we have a design corridor in our blue, which is our new road. We also have a subdatum surface, which is our bedrock. So we have all kinds of data in here to design perpendicular to the road in section views through 4 different sections cut. And they're all laid onto these views. So we have a section of this pipe, this bedrock, this existing ground, and this design road corridor. So we have a better view for any engineer or land surveyor to come in here to figure out what needs to be designed and what existing conditions and what is with respect to each other and each station along the alignment that we move. That's the end of chapter 10.